Hey there guys, welcome back to the Deck Profile with yours truly, Paul Reisman. Today, we are taking a look at the ultimate SORCLE deck list. Let's get into it.
This session brought to you by Odyssey Games for pre-orders and sealed product, CCG Prime for tons of singles and supplies, Cardo Doko for international rulers looking for products, and FowlLibrary.com for articles and wonderful deck lists, as well as our guest lecturer members King Pearlshine, Vite Ramen, Mognite, and Darren Noblock. Class is in session.
Alright guys, welcome to the ultimate SORCLE deck list provided by the one and only Stephen Jesswein. Stephen, much like myself, has loved the circle, and now I love the circle, and as circles are, we want you inside the circle as well, and we hope that this deck list will help you be in the circle. I've made a couple of changes from Stephen's initial list, but for the most part, it's all relatively exactly the same. And so I'm going to take you through what this deck was designed to do, and also give some changes that I would make based on my experience of the deck and my personal playstyle. So first of all, the SORCLE Reunion Moon Battleship. It's a giant SORCLE. How it's aerodynamic? I don't know. Let's just say that. I do not know how it is aerodynamic, but it is. One of the best things about it, though, is that you have an EX deck for your crew of 10 different crew members. They cannot be any of the cards in your deck, and you get one card. So the idea that Stephen had here, and I happen to agree with it, is that you are trying to, on your turn, get the most value out of your crew deck as you possibly can. You can reveal one card from your crew deck during your turn at random, and you may play it or you may shuffle it back in. So you really want cards to have impact, at least to some degree, as they come into the field and be worth playing. That being said, that's one of those effects that's probably going to get better over time as we get better 1 and 2 drops that impact the field state or give you some advantage in some way. So Reunion is going to be a pet deck for me for a very long time, just because that crew deck has a lot of potential going into it. Plus, it's the blue ruler, so duh, I'm gonna love this for forever. So the deck starts with its captain, Ray Aznable, Reunion's Navigator. Now, Ray Aznable has been making a huge splash into the metagame. Stephen was initially only playing 2. I thought 3 would be kind of amazing, especially with all of the different ways that we can enable its cost reduction effect in this. That being said, it's a 9/9 with Barrier that prevents all enter abilities your opponent has. You can discard it for 1 blue to prevent an enter ability, but that top line, that secret effect that says you can pay 1 less for every card returned to your hand this turn, is really, really, really solid, especially when you look at some of the other support that we got in the same set to help enable that effect. So oftentimes Ray is not coming out for 3, he's coming out for cheaper, which makes him scarier. And not just because he has those like pupilless eyes, they're just like totally blue. I don't know what's going on there. But the other main win condition of this deck, of course, naturally, I'm going to love this because it's Magic Stone Research Institute. We have 12 stones in this deck. We have a variety of different names. I've gotten to like plus 10 off of this thing before. So Magic Stone Research Institute, pretty great. Because of how Reunion works in the deck, and because it's a singleton ruler, you're not going to be removing the graveyard very often. But if you do end up getting it off, it can be somewhat useful. But at the end of the day, you're just using this to, get big stats and just end the game. So in lieu of a different kind of package, and this was kind of made earlier in the format when this was prominent, we're playing the Brad package. So you're playing 4 Brad, who counts for all attributes in hand and comes back to your hand if RFG'd or put into the graveyard that turn. You're playing that alongside Great Dimension Library. This allows you to discard and draw, and because of how it works to remove things from play instead of going to the graveyard, it'll just always discard Brad and net you a different card. This in combination with Morgiana is insane. So fun. The fact that you get to discard for free and then just look at the top 3 and just sculpt your hand is very wonderful. This is probably the best part of this entire deck. But let's get into the other pieces as well. We have 3 Last Movement and 4 Conflict of Memory and Soul. Last movement is there to bounce things and remove tempo from your opponent, and Conflict of Memory and Soul is there to cancel. I have my thoughts about this particular package, and I want to get over those, in just a second. But this was effective. It was working, and I liked it quite a lot in our games against Dalton. So it's a package. It's there. It's great. It does a lot of real good with the Conflict of Memory and Soul package in general. We're playing 4 Persephone. This is just to make sure that your opponent is also being time walked a little bit. Plus, its enter ability, pop something, draw a card, seems pretty good to me. Decent card for a 2-drop, but I have my reservations on Persephone as a card in general. I do like my cancels to do a little bit more work than Persephone does, but the pop effect is definitely relevant. It does suffer a little bit under Ray Asnable from your opponent's side, or from Lorites, things like that. I would like some removal that isn't necessarily as easily cancelable. That being said, Persephone, really helpful card. It's not like it's bad, it just has very noted trade-offs, and as time goes on, that becomes very clear to me. One of the things that's really cool in this set that we got is Cyclone, the Cyclone package. So, new Hero of Eternal. If a card was put back into your hand, a Resonator was put back into your hand this turn, this card is free, comes in, just draws you a card. It's a 1-drop human for a 2/2. It's okay under some different circumstances in this deck. This card can actually be a little scary, which is bizarre, but I've had this card actually win me a game by just being a free 2/2 body that gets busted by Institute being on the field. This thing is amazing. So he combines with Cyclone Emerges. The Mastery Cyclone is really interesting to have in this deck, but even if you don't have Cyclone Emerges and you know the top card of your deck, this is a easy draw to. It's wonderful to just cycle a card. To get a 1-cost draw to is also really, really nice. Potentially get that for free is even better. So this is here, and it's alongside Hologram of the Crimson Moon. So you play a Hologram, you play your Cyclone for free after you've drawn a card, and then if you happen to know the top card of your deck because of a Foresee Stone, etc., you get 2 additional cards. So in a lot of ways, this is a 1-card, a 1-mana draw 3, which is really, really solid. Hologram of the Crimson Moon, very solid card in general. I think it's a really interesting addition, helps you reuse other additions, reuse Resonators. It has its niche, and especially in this deck when you have things like Persephone or Lorites or Cyclone himself or anything you just want to reuse, this card is really helpful for doing that. Of course, I mentioned Morgiana. There's a lot of draw power in this deck, especially in the crew deck. So Morgiana is going to be able to look very deeply into the deck and do some really interesting things, given that every time you draw, you look at the top 3, choose 1 to add to your hand, and then you do it again if you end up drawing in another way. This is a classic card. We used to do this a lot in classic Val 2 tempo. This was just a busted card back then, and in a lot of ways it still is now. Of course, you're playing 3 Witch of the Fallen Kingdom. I'm playing 3 mostly because I'm playing 2 Pumpkin Witch in the sideboard, which is really helpful because when it comes in, it's going to give your whole board swiftness and flying through the Pumpkin Witch effect. So that means that you can play some free Resonators like Cyclone and then just swing in and do some crazy damage. Otherwise, your opponent is not going to be able to search their deck. I'd probably cut this down to 2. This card is okay. But it being this prominent in the deck is probably not something I would do for my own play style, which is kind of something that it's kind of fallen off. There's not a lot of searching in decks right now that is notable outside of maybe something like your Estella, who's looking through for Dexia's advice and stuff. But for the most part, Witch is kind of an interesting win con because it kind of matters, but it also kind of doesn't. But it's still there and it's still a win con, so it's included in the deck. Next we have Lorite, the 7 Luminaries Astrologian. It's a Lorite. What else do I have to say? This boy is always good, always been good. He's great. Then we're playing 2 Stone Monument of the Sage. Funny thing about this, it doesn't just search Brad, it also searches Morgiana, because Morgiana is a human. So Stephen wanted me to mention that because sometimes people forget that Morgiana is indeed a human. And so being able to just search her out of the deck is really solid. Plus, one of the suggestions that we had for this particular deck that Stephen was considering was adding in Feathsing, because you can search this out with Stone Monument, and then you have an addition to enable Feathsing's effect, which is really helpful. So Stone Monument, really good for that. Other than that, it's basically just a tutor, and it just sits on board as an addition. Not really sure what else it's doing outside of that, but it's here. In the Stone deck, we have 3 Moonshade, 2 Wind Moon Fragment, 3 Secret Stone of the Ethereal Moon for our first Sea Stones, the OG for Sea Stone in Kaguya Stone of Sorrow. Look at the top 2 and then arrange them however you want. Not really for Sea, but for its time, it might as well be. We have 1 Deepwood Stone, Adiractus Memoria, and then Knowledge Stone as well. Like I mentioned, there's 2 Pumpkin Witches on the side. Believe it or not, there have been times in this deck where I've been saying, I need a second Pumpkin Witch. I thought it was really interesting that he was playing 2, and I can see why he was now, because Pumpkin Witch, absolutely, I've done this multiple times, especially as the game goes long, just drawing into another Black Witch and just being able to swing in for game under Institute is super fun. So Pumpkin Witch, 2 in the sideboard. Now we gotta look at the crew deck, because the crew deck is where this deck truly shines in comparison to others. First, we're playing Aspiring Diva. If you play this from your crew deck, you get to look at the top 3, add a chant, and then it can produce blue to only be used for chants. Now, I think this card actually might deserve to be in the main deck. This card is very solid in that it just helps you to dig, and then it also helps you cheat mana for things that are really prominent and just really good. So if you end up having to play something like Last Movement without your Brad, it's very useful for that. And so it's there for that. It's also there for your Cyclone Emergence to make it free if you don't have Cyclone on board, so that's really helpful as well. So Aspiring Diva, I think it obviously, for me, very much considering it for the main board, it's very good. We also have Percival, which is like Aspiring Diva, but it digs 2 deeper, and it also adds a chant and lets you foresee 1 on a banish. Decent card. It's coming in and it's giving you raw value because you can play it for 1. Treasure Cat is much the same. Under Morgiana, this is a look at the top 6 cards of your deck, choose 2 and put them into your hand. The rest go on the bottom of the deck. Treasure Cat, classic card. It's got Barrier. What else do I have to say? It's pretty great. We also have Space-Time Mage of Mott. I'm really glad someone else is also playing this card. This card is amazing. So if you play this card from your crew deck, it's not being played from your hand. And so you're going to just come in and draw 2 cards and have a little bit of protection. This card's very solid for that reason, and so I'm really glad it's included. Togasa, the Competent Investigator. It's a kind of an Aspiring Diva, except it doesn't banish for will, and it just lets you look at the top 3 and add anything you want. So, good card is good. We have Dolly. If you have Dolly on the field, you get to de-randomize your crew deck. So at that point, it just becomes whatever you need it to be. Arguably, this card should be in the main deck as well, because then if I can just use my crew deck for pretty much anything that I want, the crew deck changes in its composition in a lot of ways. So maybe this goes into the main deck. It does have Barrier, and that's kind of the reason I love Dolly as a card in general. It's one of the best blue cards ever printed as far as I'm concerned, for its sheer utility and the fact that it de-randomizes on your turn to just give you any card you want from your crew deck for, not for free, but you get a free just tool this thing out anytime you want. Playing 1 Aphrodite, I like this card in that it allows me to draw an additional card, gain me some life back, but it's also really good to just redirect some damage. Under Institute, this card is absurd. You get this thing, 600, 800, 1,000 extra defense. Not only is it swinging for more damage, it's now sucking up more damage every turn. And so I think this card, I just thought this would be absolutely degenerate to have under Institute, so I was going to try it in the crew deck. This is not from the original build, though. Neither is Metal Lifeform Mermaid. It's a mermaid. I had to play it, plus when it comes in, it's really good for having utility to pretty much just anything that's causing me trouble on my opponent's side, their own institute, for instance. It's just really good for like just getting that out of the way and making sure they probably never see it again. So I just really like Mermaid as a card design, and so I placed this in the deck just as an experiment. I also played Lightning Rod Mermaid. Again, I liked having 1-drop control cards that could shift the board state in my favor a little bit. No one expects Lightning Rod Mermaid in the main, so having it surprise, here you go, this thing, you have to target it, and it gets barrier every turn. Plus, under Institute, it gets bigger too. I just thought this card was really solid, and while I would likely never mainboard this card, having it in the crew deck just means it's more accessible for me, which I really thought I liked. And then I have one Bastet, Creator of Cats. So Bastet allows you to also recycle, which means that it enables Cyclone, it enables Ray, plus, you know, it can target anything. It doesn't just have to be a Resonator. It can be literally anything. It can be your Black Witch. It can be your Hologram Moon. It can be your own Ray if it's going to be destroyed somehow. Bastet's just really helpful. And so I just was like, hey, this is great. Plus it gives barrier to a target J Resonator if you want to banish a stone, which I have a few extra. So it's useful for that reason. Probably would never really use that effect, but it's good to be able to bounce things back and get value, make Rays cheaper, make Cyclone free, etc. So I included this in the deck. But guys, let me know what you think of the Ultimate Sorcle. This is by far one of the funnest decks I've played recently. It's not something that people really know what to do with, because they're like, what does Sorcle even do? Is this ruler just an afterthought? I don't think so. I think there's something interesting that lies in the depths of this not Death Star. So guys, let me know what you think of the deck down in the comment section down below. While you're down there, if you want to hit that like button, it really helps the video out and it tells us what kind of content you like. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. Guys, what are you doing? You're playing Force of Will. You should be subscribed to this channel. It's the -- place for Force of Will content outside of the company itself. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. And until next time, guys, I can't speak, but this has been Paul, and I'll catch you later.